All right. Welcome again, VHR Raiders, World of Warcraft Raiders, YouTubers, anybody that's watching the video. I just want to go ahead and throw a shout out. Thank you again for watching the video series. We broke 2,000 views in our first week. I did not expect anything of that nature, to be honest. I really thought that just like my 2025 Guildmates Raiders would have watched it and that's it. The compliments and all that stuff means the world to me. Thank you so much. Korag going to do a breakdown of the battle plan for our normal heroic approach. We hear it at the start, but I can also recommend that when we were first learning it, healing at the first shield to help deal with the ads properly, have the heals come out, deal with for example, a fire debuff or something that might rotate in. Really helped out initially, so that way you can kind of see the entire dynamics of the first minute and a half of the fight. But pre-raid, these are the things that a raid leader are going to have to do. One, you're going to have to designate your healing cooldown rotation. So you're going to have to sit there and tell this healer you're doing this during the first time that debuff shadows cast. Second healer, you're doing this. Third healer, you're doing this. And it's just an easy way to manage it, because when that shield absorb comes out in relative nature to the other attacks that are being present, especially, for example, a debuff going off and then him rotating into a shield with the spawns being active, so their damage is going off, and you don't have them in the proper position as far as in the nullification barriers, it can cause all kinds of problems. And it's very relative to see it around the 2.5 minute and 3 minute marks. That's where we saw it quite frequently on our first night, 2 nights working with him. Next is your designated shield absorption team. Your designated shield absorption team needs to be hunters a majority of the time, but any kind of caster really works out. The idea here is that by designating who's going in, to be able to assign a healer to them properly, so that every time they're rotating in, they're getting the necessary heals they need to. They know to activate their defensive properly or use a personal as necessary. And then also where they're going to be going. So initially, I enjoyed actually putting marks intentionally on top of them, and that really actually helped them learn where their spacing was and where they're going to work. They also began talking to each other, saying I'll take everything positioned to here or whatnot, and we did flags. So we put like a flag here, a flag here, flag here, and they would just that'd be their area. That's another way to approach it. I found the symbols were best on top, because then they just saw where the symbol was going. They knew not to engage that one, and they could go to another one. Next is designated mass movement individual. You need to put a mark on somebody, and you need to tell 1 to 2 other people to follow and ghost them and practice it and rotate through those multiple people as you go through, especially on your first night. By training multiple people how to do it, everybody really gets a good sense of how it needs to be done. And then we have the spread 5-yard rule on the fire. If people fail to spread properly, especially after a trample comes down and they're not avoiding it well, it's going to get really bad really quick with the amount of damage that comes out, especially if you get an explosion. People don't get collapsed properly, so they don't go from 0 to 5 yards to back to 0 onto a designated targeted individual. Then the ice debuff, the frozen debuff comes up. You got the orb going on, and it becomes a train wreck really quickly. So you got to make sure that everybody understands the 5-yard rule, and that they also know to make sure that they avoid tramples consistently. Now, in our format, for the way that we like to lay the boss down as far as where we want to get our people to be at, so that way we're most effective, we have the tank at the 12 o'clock position, range is at 6, and then melee gets everything from 3 o'clock all the way around to 9 o'clock. The secondary tank is going to be in a position just to the right or left of the other tank, and that's just because 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, 5 yards, all the way around. It's able to give everybody a lot of spacing to be able to work. The nice thing about the stage, too, is that you really don't need to put down like a center pivot flag, for example, because there's 2 circles that are graphics that are on the ground, one large, one small. Rotating your tank around the outside of the smaller circle gives you a perfect distance as far as for maximum heals, and then range just follows the large circle around the perimeter, like right on the line of it. We initially start the fight to the right of a flag that we do put down, though. We don't really need it now because we're so familiar with it. Everybody is. But what we do is we put a blue flag right here and then designate a range or a healer with the blue symbol on top of them. And then everybody was spread to the left of it until after the first fire debuff gets cast. Then at that point, then they stack and then rotate properly through it as each trample comes through. Always position yourself directly past the trample, so that way you minimize the amount of tramples that are going down. It also, by keeping them really tight too, you kind of give like a more open area to be able to work. When the tank debuff goes on them and they need to run out of the position, the nice thing about the tank initially taking them and then rotating is that the tank can run over into this direction here. So as designated, right? They're here, and then they'll run over to there, and they can just kind of do a loop and then come right back. But as soon as tank 2 taunts, Korag will turn and face him, and then where the range is, it makes it really easy to keep that angle as you keep pivoting with him all the way around the circle. And then for dealing with the shield, once the shield's down, you gotta have a certain amount of magic damage naturally, and that's going to speed up the process as far as how quickly his shield comes down, which increases the amount of magic damage that he takes too. But at that point, when the shield's around like 10% as raid leader, I would call out that it's at 10%. And that just gives a heads up so that way you don't have shield absorption mistakes of individuals walking in at the wrong time and end up doing that. And they become the ones absorbed. But regardless, have a designated healer ready for it and then adjust accordingly. And then really, like, the fight is just a matter of pivoting them properly. Now, at the point when the shield goes down and the ads come up, we were initially just doing one tank with MDs from the hunters to be able to bring them into the nullification barrier, and then we just blew them up. But the reality is both tanks actually can grab up ads and be responsible for them, just as long as like one tank takes priority with the MDs. So if there's any late casting ones, because he kind of does them in an order where it's like he releases 5, he releases 5, he releases 5, And when he's doing this, you want to make sure that you're getting him properly over here. The other tank can still pick them up. Both tanks can pick up a bunch of them, and then one tank just kind of comes in here. And then as soon as he comes back out of the shield, just have one designated tank, no matter what, do it. I would just tell Ice, you'll be responsible for it, or I'll be responsible for it. And then that way what you have is that the other tank can just immediately bring them right back to where it's supposed to, and everybody can get back into burning down the ads and then properly moving. Now, if you have any questions, please comment below. If not, hit me up in game again. It's Scion VHR. Number 1266. You can also post below. Please click subscribe. Also, please click like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll continue on. I'll now do one for Imperator, and that'll be posted shortly. Have a blessed evening.